That was President Trump this week defending his administration's efforts to send the National Guard into Democratic-run cities across the country, saying that's what the public wants. And while crime remains a top concern for many voters, new polling suggests that there may not be broad support for the president's latest moves. 58% of Americans in the latest CBS News YouGov survey say they oppose deploying National Guard troops to U.S. cities, while the new Reuters Ipsos poll finds that a majority of Americans, including 7 in 10 Democrats and half of Republicans, believe the president should deploy armed troops only when faced with external threats.
All right, folks, so Donald Trump is getting some nightmare news courtesy of Fox News by way of brutal polling about his deployment of National Guard troops into blue states, and also from commentary and analysis provided by infamous Republican strategist and Fox News' top political analyst, Karl Rove, who basically shuts down what Trump is trying to do here, and he does so using the word that Trump reportedly hates above all else, loser. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at here and several things to dive into, but I want to finish this particular clip here because Karl Rove joins to offer his analysis, and again, it's nightmare news for Trump.
Let's bring in Wall Street Journal columnist and Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Welcome, Karl. Good to see you. So let's talk about this, the political impact of the decision to send National Guard troops. How is this breaking down politically?
Well, I think you touched on an important point. If you take a look at the Reuters Ipsos poll, 58% of those surveyed said they believe that you should send troops only for external threats. However, we're deeply, and the Republicans are 51%, Democrats 72%, and other their way to get at independence is 53%. But if you look deeper, there's another question, which was, should the president send troops even if a governor objects? That was 37 yes, 48 no. And it was 70-18 among Republicans, 13-79 among Democrats, and 28-50 among independents. So, yes, we don't like him. We believe he shouldn't deploy. If a governor objects, though, the partisanship starts to be felt. Republicans say, yeah, override the governor. Democrats say no. And independents tend to side with the Democrat.
So let's stop right there for just a second. So again, this is Karl Rove. He was, he basically climbed to notoriety during the first and second Bush administrations. He was depicted by pop culture and Family Guy, for example, as basically like an Emperor Palpatine-like figure, very smart, very conservative. Now, he is not diehard MAGA. He is certainly pro-Trump compared to the Democrats. He wants Trump to succeed, but he's one of the few in Fox News and the Wall Street Journal circles who is willing to criticize Trump and publicly break with Trump, even though I'm sure he'd prefer not to. He's also infamous for his whiteboard analyses that he actually pulls out on camera. So he's just breaking it down where he's like, listen, the numbers here aren't particularly flattering. And independents are always, when it comes to Trump, independents are always the cohort to look at the most because, of course, even though MAGA is by far the biggest and most dangerous cult in American history, certainly the biggest and most dangerous political cult and cult of personality in American history, they're not a majority. They've never been a majority. And Donald Trump has never had majority support widespread. Like he won the popular vote, of course, in the 2024 election for the first time after running for 3 times, right? But even then, he didn't win a majority. He simply won a plurality. Independents are what give Trump his strength. That's what usually tips him over the finish line. And in poll after poll after poll on a variety of issues, and now including the National Guard deployment, Democrats, or rather independents, are more likely to side with Democrats against Trump. That's really bad, especially as we head into the 2026 midterms. And again, I also want to note like how he talks about, well, you really see partisan breakdowns when the question asks, well, what happens if a governor of a blue state objects or tries to stop Trump from sending in the National Guard? Then Republicans are like, hell yeah, screw states' rights. I know we talk about states' rights all the time, but what we really meant are states' rights to own black people. That's really what we meant. That's what Republicans meant. When we talk about states' rights as a general thesis, Republicans are like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, not like for general things. No, not for like sovereignty, state sovereignty or stuff like that. Not if a Republican president wants to do something, then the Republican president should just roll over. Now, again, imagine if the shoe were on the other foot and it were a Democratic president threatening to send Democratic states' National Guard into a red state like Texas or Alabama or something like that. I imagine these same Republicans would change their tune quite quickly. But let's finish the rest of the clip.
Voters and say, no, I don't think that should happen. So this ultimately, I think, will tend to be a loser if the question is, should the president do this or should he have done it? On the other hand, it might get him a slight improvement among the people saying, who are concerned about crime, by saying, well, at least he's taking action. But overall, I think this is going to end up being a loser for the president.
And again, reportedly, of all the words in the English lexicon, loser is the word that Trump hates the most. And he certainly hates that word being thrown in his direction. How dare you? You can't call me a loser. That's not what I am. Well, looks increasingly like that might be the case. Let's finish the rest of this clip.
Well, he's, of course, making the case, certainly his lawyers are in court, that these National Guard troops are there to protect federal buildings and to protect ICE agents as they're doing their jobs. And you have this obstruction by the mayor of Chicago and certainly at a minimum just a lack of cooperation. And they literally say, Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, and Brandon Johnson say explicitly, we're not going to cooperate with ICE. So, I mean, there's a kind of logic to what he's doing to try to protect these agents, is there not?
Yeah, well, look, he has authority to deploy the National Guard to protect federal facilities. I think the public, though, is going to look at this and make a decision whether are they seeing what they saw during the summer of 2020 and riots in Portland, nightly attacks on the federal courthouse, or is this going to be protesters outside a facility in suburban Chicago? I mean, how this plays out is going to depend upon how the locals take this in stride. If it heats up, yes, the president's going to look better. If it doesn't heat up, if it really is just sort of meeting the needs of protecting the federal facilities, I'm not certain it's going to work to his advantage. We saw this a little bit in Portland, where the president was asked about it, and he said, well, I'm hearing that there are fires and riots and lots of violence every night. I don't know where he was getting that, because that's not what they're seeing on Portland TV.
Yeah, so Karl Rove bringing the bad news, bringing the nightmare news to Fox News. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump launches a Truth Social screed against Karl Rove. It wouldn't be the first time when Rove gives him news that he doesn't like. So again, just to reaffirm what Rove is talking about, poll after poll after poll shows that Trump's use of the National Guard in U.S. cities is not particularly popular. Again, just to give you a little bit of a breakdown from Axios, share of Americans who say they agree with the president can deploy troops in select circumstances. Again, areas with external threats, that has popular support in a state. Even if its governor objects, no, then an overwhelming majority oppose. Americans remain opposed to the Trump administration's domestic use of the military, while placing higher trust in veterans who run for office than business officials, according to recent polling. The polls are the latest indicator that Trump's continued use of the National Guard in U.S. cities isn't sitting well with some voters, nor many of the state and local officials impacted by the decisions. So far, Trump has ordered the National Guard to Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Memphis, Chicago, and Portland. Now, again, Memphis is a bit different because Memphis is in Tennessee. Tennessee is controlled by a Republican governor. It's a red state. Now, the problem is with that, too, this is how you know it's total bullshit, in that it's just fascist theater. It's not actually an attempt to crack down on a serious crime threat. Memphis does have a crime issue, by the way, a longstanding crime issue, but the Republican governor of Tennessee could have deployed the National Guard himself if he felt that it was necessary to use the National Guard, to deploy the National Guard in Tennessee to crack down on crime. He didn't. He punted to Trump in order to give Trump an optics W. So again, you can tell that even the Republican governor of Tennessee doesn't give a shit about deploying the National Guard. Otherwise, he would have done it himself. So again, the polls are pretty clear on this. It's not good for Trump. Now, will it become a total disaster? That remains to be seen. But speaking of blue states and states targeted by Donald Trump, I want to play some clips here of Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who was interviewed by ABC's George Stephanopoulos either before or after Stephanopoulos' pretty brutal interview with J.D. Vance.
Morning. I know you just heard Vice President Vance. He didn't directly answer whether he agreed with President Trump that you've committed a crime, but what he did say was it seems pretty criminal to him, your behavior. What's your response?
Well, you just heard a tidal wave of lies from the Vice President of the United States. It's a bit shocking, and you heard over and over again him just making things up on national television with you. You know, there's a reason why the judge here in federal court said that the administration lacks credibility, and why even the Nobel Prize Committee chair said that the administration lacks integrity. This administration, led by a 34-time convicted felon, is threatening to jail people that are their political opponents. They're making things up to go after people. We're seeing it day in and day out. And the fact that he's made a threat against me, I'm not afraid. I'm going to stand up for the people of my state. And we've got to all stand together, because there is truly unconstitutional actions that are coming out of this administration, coming at the states and the people of the United States. And all of us, Democrats and Republicans, need to speak out about it. One thing
I agree. Indeed, we should. I want to play a couple more clips, though. Let's play two more clips, again, to really just drive this home. Again, here's Governor Pritzker being interviewed by Stephanopoulos on ABC.
The latest federal judge has allowed troops from Texas to remain in Illinois, but said they can't be deployed in Chicago. What is the situation exactly on the ground right now?
Well, there are federalized troops that have been sent here from Texas. They are in a federal facility. They're not allowed to come onto the streets of Chicago or our suburbs or anywhere in Illinois, according to the determination of the judge. We have also troops from California, not sent by California, but rather by the president when they were deterred from Oregon. So we've got two states, other states, troops, and of course the Illinois National Guard that's been federalized and under the direction of the President of the United States. None are allowed on the streets of Chicago right now, because we've won the temporary restraining order and the appeal of that TRO. And we hope to continue to win. Look, we've got to rely on the courts to do the right thing. I realize that sometimes that's risky business, especially when some have been appointed by Donald Trump. But we've seen that even a Trump-appointed judge out in California, in the West Coast, has ruled against the administration. So I do think that their oath of office actually matters to them, and that they'll make the right determination.
Yeah, so there was an appellate court that walked back a partial victory, or partially walked back, I should say, a victory for Governor Pritzker. As Politico notes, District Circuit Court walks back judge's block on Trump's National Guard, but this is the key part. They can stay at their base, but they aren't allowed to deploy in the city. So it's basically trying to split the baby while giving Trump some sort of win, like, okay, fine, you can have the Guard, but they have to stay here. They have to stay at the base, and you can't actually send them into the streets. That's what Governor Pritzker was talking about. And we'll close on this one last clip from Governor Pritzker.
And Illinois itself is the 19th safest state in the United States. I'd like to be in the top 10, but 19th is a whole heck of a lot better than Texas or Florida.
But if the president invokes the Insurrection Act, there's not much you can do, is there?
Well, the Insurrection Act is called the Insurrection Act for a reason. There has to be a rebellion. There has to be an insurrection in order for him to be allowed to invoke it. Again, he can say anything he wants, but if the Constitution means anything, and I guess we all are questioning that right now, but the courts will make the determination. If the Constitution means anything, the Insurrection Act cannot be invoked to send them in because they want to fight crime. Let me add that they're claiming in court that that's not the reason that they're calling up troops to send them into our states. They're claiming in court that this is about protecting ICE facilities and ICE agents, and not about crime on the streets. But
it's a great point, which is that they're saying one thing publicly to justify and try to drum up support for their maneuvers, but knowing that they have to make a case before a judge, and therefore they have to provide some sort of case that can withstand a judge's scrutiny and legal rigor, then they make a separate claim, okay? A totally contradictory claim. So great point by Governor Pritzker here. And again, who knows how Donald Trump will react to this bad news from Fox News and Karl Rove, but I don't imagine that he's going to heed their wisdom, and I imagine he will be quite pissed. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.